Hey, we don't serve drifters here.
Actually, I'm a gumshoe and I'm looking for some information.
You're a private investigator? You look like someone ordered the Drunken Detective starter pack from Crazy Gary's Recycling Emporium.
Hey, you won't help things by calling me names.
Yeah, sure, sorry, or whatever. So, are you any good? You worked on anything I might have heard about?
Remember the Martian Memorandum case?
Oh yeah, I remember that one. So you're the bumbling, burpin-soaked fool who cheated on your wife with the secretary just so you could pound some information out of her to solve a case.
Understand this, bucko. One more step and you'll be brushing your teeth in a little cup by your bed.
Okay, I was just asking. Sheesh. Look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot. Can I offer you a free beer or something?
I'd really rather have a few fingers of bourbon.
Rightio, 4 fingers of the house's special bathtub bourbon coming right up. Anything else?
Can you help me find a ride to the Moonchild?
The Moonchild, you say? Now, I might be able to help you, but information doesn't come cheap.
So how much will some information cost me?
Well, what can you offer?
I have an amazing baton twirling routine.
Look, I'm asking you if you have any useless inventory items you can show me over and over and over again. Like, say, a stinky, rotten fish.
I don't think so.
Okay, how about a purple ray disc of Jacques Sparrow's hit single, Mon Dieu?
No.
Later.
Okay, then what about a silver locket with a single strand of hair from Keith's mustache?
I wish.
Oh, me too. Then perhaps you have a copy of the erotic and taboo adventures of Alexander and Rosella on mini laserdisc.
I think I might.
Really?
No.
Oh, thank God for that. You know what? Let's just stick to cash, shall we?
Okay. I got a $100 bill right here. Says you like to talk to strangers.
Yoink! Sure, that should cover the first installment at least. Oh, and you have the secretive emblem that proves you're one of us, right?
No, I must be in my other overcoat.
I see. Well, that's too bad, Mr. Murphy.
How do you know my name?
Oh, I know all about you, Mr. Murphy. Most importantly, I know what you're after. And now that you've managed to somehow bumble yourself way out here to me, I have no other choice than to take care of you once and for all.
Please don't kill me. Please! I'll do anything, but don't kill me!
Kill you? No, that would be much too quick and easy. No, I have something really special lined up for you, Mr. Murphy. Something that's much worse. I'm going to subject you to a fair and balanced retrospective. Fuck it, let's get on with it. Hi, I'm the Space Quest historian. FMV games, huh? I think it's pretty universally accepted that they were, for the most part, a bit shit. Turns out when you spend all your time shooting a bunch of terribly untalented actors against blue screens, you sometimes forget that you're actually making a game. But the idea had promise back in the day, and believe it or not, us DOS gamers back in the early 90s were very excited for what this new CD-ROM medium could bring. I mean, we were used to 3.5-inch floppy disk with a maximum capacity of 1.44 megabytes. Imagine what an optical disk with 720 megabytes of storage could do for games. The earliest forays into CD-ROM adventure games were cautious toe dips that involved taking games that had already come out on floppy disks and simply adding voice acting to accompany all the dialogue. But in 1994, Access Software decided to take this shit to the next level. They'd always been into blending quote-unquote movie-type shit into their games, even though they were confined to floppies. You can go watch my Martian Memorandum video if you want to know more. But their first CD-ROM game was gonna be different, and hot fucking damn did they shoot for the moon. Killing Moon, specifically. That's a pun, isn't it? God, I'm sorry. Under a Killing Moon is the third game in the Tex Murphy series, and it's arguably where the series first started to gel and solidify the real character of Tex. The previous games, Mean Streets and Martian Memorandum, were, for all intents and purposes, just practice runs, where Tex was just a cardboard cutout stand-in for the player with no real personality to speak of. other than your stereotypical smart-ass PI, but here, Tex finally has a backstory and some defining character traits. He's still a smart-ass PI, but he's got more substance to him. Right off the bat, we're told that Tex married Sylvia Linsky, his client from the first game, but divorced her because she kept flirting with upholstery men in the cringiest way imaginable.
Oh, kiss me, Rudy, and set my lips on fire.
Okay.
At the start of this game, Tex finds himself alone and living in a dilapidated mutant neighborhood in old San Francisco. Oh yeah, World War III happened and nuked everything to shit, and now half the population of the Earth have horrifying genetic mutations. I forgot to mention that, but I've already covered that fairly extensively in my previous 2 videos, so yeah, that's the gist of it. Anyway, Tex is out of work, depressed, and merrily hitting the sauce, when his old boss, Colonel Ray Dobbs, who used to run a detective agency which he kicked Tex out of for reporting him for being a shithead, drops by to tell him he looks like a bag of ass.
My God, Murphy, you look like hell.
And then off he fucks and leaves Tex to, presumably, drink himself into oblivion, and the game starts proper the next morning. I just gotta skip ahead for a bit here and talk about the actors in this game. The guy playing the Colonel is an actor named Brian Keith, who was in a bunch of movies I've never seen, and he was one of the 4 big Hollywood names that the game touted on the front of the box. We also heard James Earl Jones during the intro of the game.
Oh no, not Murphy.
May God rest his fucking soul. Seriously, this guy could narrate a fucking microwave instruction manual and I'd still be riveted.
Fine. Tahiti.
He also narrates the death screens, and honestly, having James Earl Jones tell you how you fucked up is a true stroke of genius. You almost want to go out of your way to get yourself killed just so you can listen to his dulcet tones berate you for being a dumbass.
Try to move a little faster this time. If you get out of this alive, do me a favor and start getting some regular exercise. And it wouldn't hurt to lay off the smokes and booze for a while either.
Mr. Keith here, however, has probably the strangest speech pattern I've ever heard. Sometimes he draws out the first syllable of a phrase like he's clenching his sphincter and straining for the words to come out the proper end.
Oh, I can imagine it. I've been thinking about it for years now. I haven't had a decent night's sleep in 38 years.
I like to strain the sauce.
And other times he speaks past his lines like he took a hit off an 8-ball right before the director yelled action.
If you don't, somebody's gonna find you floating in the bay with a hole in your head.
Settle down, fella. Anyway, in addition to the big names, we'll come back to the other 2 in a bit, Tex himself is played by Chris Jones, who was also the photograph sprite for Tex in the first 2 games. Chris was also the co-designer of all the Tex Murphy games, as well as Chief Financial Officer of Access Software, who famously once quipped in an interview, "I had a look at the numbers and decided I could afford myself." Anyway, let's get on with the story. The game is divided into chapters, 1 for each day of the story, and there are 6 in total, 7 if you count the epilogue. The first day is just a tutorial. It's like a little self-contained mini-adventure that has no impact on the game's bigger story, so let's skip ahead. On the second day, Tex is invited to the palatial mansion of Countess Rainier, who hires Tex to recover her stolen crystal bird statue. He tracks down the whereabouts of the statue to a black market dealer named Eddie Ching, steals it back, and then goes home for the evening.
Oh, shoot. I go through all that work to get the statuette out of Ching's place, and I leave it in the damn speeder. And I didn't even roll up the windows. I am such an idiot.
Can't argue with that, Tex. So, Tex now has to track down who stole the stolen statuette that he stole back from Eddie Ching, and that's where shit starts getting complicated. Turns out the case that Tex's old boss, Colonel Strain the Sauce, was working on was also to find the statue and keep it away from the shape-shifting dude that mugged Tex, and also stuck a very unconvincing prop knife into the Colonel's chest. It hasn't done wonders for his peculiar speech impediment, though.
He got impatient, stuck a knife in my chest.
I like to strain the sauce.
The Colonel was working with an organization called Capricorn who dismantles doomsday cults for a living. The whole business with the crystal bird statue is tied to a particularly nasty doomsday cult who consider the statue an important part of their end-of-the-world prophecy. Fuck knows why. It's never explained what the stupid fucking bird does in the first place, but doomsday cults are pretty fucking strange to begin with, so sure, why not? After taking the near-fatally stabbed Colonel to the hospital, Tex is then accosted by Eddie Ching, the black market dealer he stole the statue from. Predictably, she's a little upset that Tex nabbed the statue from her, but she's even more upset that he lost it because she was trying to keep it away from the Doomsday cult as well. So, with 2 separate people telling him that there's a big cataclysmic event in store for everyone because Tex is a fucking idiot, it would appear it's high time for him to get his fedora-wearing head out of his ass and do something about it. Let's cut to the chase because this recap's already been going on long enough. The doomsday cult in question is another pile of shit racist assholes who want to rid all the mutants off the face of the earth. Instead of taking the subtle approach and mind controlling everyone who opposes them like J. St. Gideon was planning to do in the first game, these dumb fucks just want to nuke the site from orbit. Literally. They've built an orbital space station called the Moonchild, so that's the killing moon that everyone's under, in case that wasn't obvious, and this place is supposed to be a safe habitat for all the quote-unquote genetically pure shitheads, while they wait out the residual effects of a virus they've developed that will kill every living thing on the planet. Like this. Okay, I know this looks hilarious today, but seriously, this scared the shit out of me as a kid. Anyway, the about 1,000 racist shitbirds will be safely on the Moonchild when they deploy the virus, and once the virus has cleared the atmosphere after 40 years, they'll return to Earth and rebuild society as some sort of inbred shit-stained paradise. And who's bankrolling all this shit? Why, it's this guy from the last game. Yeah, remember when I said this in the last video? Oh, and before we wrap this up, this aforementioned business dude with a heart of coal? Yeah, remember this face for the next game. No explanation, I'm just gonna leave you with that little cliffhanger. Yeah, this is the guy. Now, there was no indication in the last game that this guy was pure evil. Back then, he was just a sleazy, rich business asshole with a gambling problem, and now, all of a sudden, he's Space Hitler. And the best part about this is, the game doesn't even bother to give you any context for this. Tex just winds up on the Moonchild, and this shit biscuit appears on his spinning video cube of bullshit and says,
Lowell Percival, at your service. You did a job for me on Mars a few years back.
And that's it. He doesn't remind you what job that was or how he became Space Hitler, and then Tex just goes,
So, Lowell Percival is behind all this.
well, thanks so ever fucking much. No need to elaborate any further. That just clears everything up as far as I'm concerned. I'm serious. That's all the backstory you get. I guess if you just come off playing Martian Memorandum, you might have some idea who this turd stain is, but even then, he was just a minor character in a sea of names that sped by you in a blur with no real characteristics and certainly no explicit or implied importance. He was just another face in a long line of twitching faces to interrogate before moving on to the next. It's such a bewildering and bizarre choice for a main antagonist, especially because he's never been brought up or even mentioned in passing in this game before the grand reveal moment. And what's even more fucked up is that for most people, this was the first Tex Murphy game they ever played. I mean, sure, the two preceding games were modestly popular and sold reasonably well, but Under a Killing Moon was in an entirely different league. They bet the fucking farm on this game and pulled out all the stops. This was one of the first AAA CD-ROM games of the early 90s, and they must have realized that there would be a ton of new players coming into this game with no idea what the previous two games were even about. Hell, up to this point, the game might as well have been the first because it stands so strongly on its own 2 feet and makes absolutely no references to its predecessors. That whole business with the Colonel and Tex getting kicked out of his detective agency? No. Or the stuff about Tex living in a mutant neighborhood and being down on his luck? No, that's all new stuff that was never mentioned in the previous two games. So, for all intents and purposes, Under a Killing Moon was a fresh, blank slate for a new generation of Tex Murphy players, right up to this bewildering grand reveal. In fact, this game hits the reset button so hard it completely annihilates previous character traits as early as 5 minutes into the game. Tex's gun, which he put to liberal use in the first two games, is unceremoniously tossed out an open window right at the start of day one. And Tex doesn't even have his secretaries or informants from the previous two games to lean on. He's completely on his own, so bye-bye Stacy.
I'll transmit the information.
Not any fucking more, you won't. Likewise with Vanessa and her questionable attitudes towards sexual harassment in the workplace.
There's nothing in our files.
Also gone, and Lee. Oh, Lee. Fuck, I'm gonna miss that lipstick-munching, money-grubbing little bitch.
Be realistic.
The only thing tying these games together up until this point has been the brief mention of Sylvia Linsky being Tex's ex-wife, and Mean Streets never even mentioned anything about them getting married. Alexis Alexander, the runaway heiress from Martian Memorandum, whom Tex presumably ran off and did the Martian bedroom boogie with over a hot dog and a beer from Weenie World, is never even mentioned once. Everything about this game feels fresh and brand new, so why choose this particular moment to introduce a character from the last game in such a pivotal role and expect everyone to remember who he was or what his deal was? And just to make it clear, he had no fucking deal to begin with. I know I'm belaboring the point here, but it bears mentioning again, he was just another face in a sprawling parade of characters in Martian Memorandum, and at no point did that game even so much as hint at the fact that he was gonna turn into a mass-murdering, super racist cult figurehead. This just boggles my fucking mind. But All that aside, of course, Tex saves the day by blowing up the Moonchild and all the space Nazis with it, and returns home to find the Colonel at his local neighborhood diner, still straining through his lines like he's a human pasta maker.
But I'm not so young as I used to be.
I like to strain the sauce.
Now, obviously, I skipped over a bunch of stuff because otherwise we'd be here all fucking day. But let's talk about why this game was such a phenomenal juggernaut when it came out. This was Access Software's first CD-ROM title, and of course, being Access Software, they went absolutely bonkers with it. This game had so much FMV in it that it wouldn't fit on a single CD, or even two. The manual says they might have been able to squeeze it onto 3 CDs, but they would have had to cut some content, so they went the extra mile and shipped the game on 4 goddamn CDs. And this was at a time, mind you, that most games still came on floppy disks, and their corresponding CD-ROM versions usually fit comfortably onto a single CD with space to spare. There were some other games that were developed exclusively for CD-ROM and some that came on more than one CD, like The Seventh Guest, which came out a year earlier and shipped on 2 CDs. But even that one was kind of a cheat because the whole game technically fit on the first CD and only the last room and final cutscene was on disc 2. So for a game to come out on 4 CDs was just absolutely insane. And you might think, oh, they probably just shot a movie and had shit compression and that's why it takes up so much space, so you just sit there and watch a movie for an hour and a half, and no, that couldn't be further from the truth. This game has hours and hours of gameplay in it, and the FMV is not just a tacked on component to give it some extra flair, but an important, essential part of the experience that's carefully woven into the gameplay. A big part of any good detective story is talking to people and interrogating suspects, and this was a key element in the Tex Murphy series right from the start. But whereas the previous games delivered most of their NPC responses in text boxes, this game has all the lines delivered by the NPCs as full motion video snippets. So every time you ask a character something, their response is a little video clip of them actually responding, and this being a Tex Murphy game means that there are a lot of people to talk to, and all of this adds up to a shitload of video. The actors in the game are mostly unknowns, and a lot of them were Access employees. Rook Garner, the crusty old pawnshop owner, is played by Doug Vandergrift, who was the lead artist on the game, as well as far as I can tell, every other game Access ever put out. And Paul Dubois, the guy who gets hilariously bulged to death, was Mark Hulka, who did video compositing. And as I mentioned before, Tex is played by Chris Jones, who also designed the game, and Mac Mullen, the overworked and perpetually disgruntled police detective who will use any excuse to antagonize Tex, is played by Chris Jones's brother Kevin. May he rest in peace. The game does have 4 familiar faces from the Hollywood industry that received top billing. We've already talked about Brian Keith and James Earl Jones, but we haven't mentioned the other 2 yet. If you've ever seen Natural Born Killers, you might recognize this dude playing the shape-shifting character, the Chameleon. He's played by Russell Means, who's famous for showing up whenever a Hollywood movie or TV show needed an authentic Native American actor. The most famous of the cast is Margot Kidder, who has a very minor role as a bartender at an off-world waypoint station before Tex goes to the Moonchild. She's really only known for one role in the movie industry, but it's such a big role that I can see why she got top billing, even though her character is only on screen in this game for about 5 minutes. If you've ever seen the first Superman movies from 1978 and 1980, you know, the ones with Christopher Reeves as Superman, you'll instantly recognize her as Lois Lane. A quick side note here, Tex takes his speeder to the orbital waypoint station. I didn't know speeders could break through the Earth's fucking atmosphere. I mean, how amazing is it that your flying car can travel into fucking space? Of all the things in this game that you might consider implausible, or at least very unlikely to happen even in a sci-fi futuristic setting, this might be the one that takes the cake. Anyway, the video quality is frankly pretty amazing for 1994, although it does have some odd quirks. All the actors were filmed separately, so they don't really react to each other. Instead, when one person talks, the other person just freeze frames into a cardboard cutout and waits in suspended animation for their turn to speak. The actors do a good enough job so you don't really notice it most of the times, but it's one of those things where once you see it, you can't really unsee it. My best guess is they did it this way so they didn't have to animate the whole screen and save on precious CPU power. Instead, the backgrounds and other characters remain stationary, so the only thing the game has to move is the characters currently talking. This also goes a long way of explaining why some of the video clips are in inconsistent resolutions. For instance, this shot of Tex running down the corridor of the Moonchild, or this pan-down crane shot from the opening cinematic, are in a postage stamp resolution, probably because both shots are fully animated, as in there's nothing for the renderer to reuse from previous frames, and this would have been absolute murder on computers and CD-ROM drives in 1994 if they tried to play this in full screen. Contrast that to other scenes, such as Tex being confronted by the Colonel in the opening cutscene, which is rendered in full screen because it's just two characters standing around talking to each other on top of a static background. Slightly more bizarre is how the FMVs, regardless of the resolution, seem to play fine for the first few seconds and then seemingly run out of breath, making the frame rate stutter. Again, it's not something that's super noticeable if you're sufficiently engrossed in what's going on, but it does make visual puzzles like this stupid shell game almost impossible because the stuttering frame rate makes the balls jitter across the screen like they're all having minor seizures.
Finish up this lousy shell game and let's get on with it.
Easier said than done, buddy. Have you seen this shit? But at least the game doesn't do that hideous Venetian blind interlaced video that most FMV games would employ in the future to save on CPU, which I fucking hate because it makes me go cross-eyed about an hour into playing a game. And again, you gotta cut it some slack since it was one of the first full-motion video games out there. This came out in October 1994, a short time after Myst, which only came out a year before in September 1993. Not to mention that the gameplay outside all of this video stuff was a mind-blowing experience all unto itself. In previous games, exploring a location was done in traditional 2D adventure game style, but this game has a full-blown 3D engine in it. Every location you can explore is a 3D environment with full freedom of movement, and yeah, by this time we'd already had fully 3D RPG titles like Ultima, Underworld, and of course first-person shooters like Doom, but for a point-and-click adventure game, this shit was unheard of. Hell, you can even run this in a full-screen SVGA resolution of 640 by 480 if your PC had the muscle for it, which would be the modern-day equivalent of rendering one of the fucking Avatar movies in real time. Some people find the interface a bit clunky, but I actually think it works quite well. When you're exploring a 3D location, you can switch between two modes, movement mode and interact mode. Obviously, movement mode is for moving text around the environment, but when you switch to interact mode, text stops and the screen now becomes a first-person point-and-click screen. So now you can interact with whatever's on screen, and if the thing you want isn't visible on screen, well, you just switch back to movement mode and move around until it is. This becomes second nature really fast, and I honestly think this works better than having the two modes mixed together like they did in Tesla Effect, one of the later games in the series, because the stop-start method actually affords you a variety of options for interaction courtesy of the predefined verbs at the bottom of the screen here. Look, get, move, open, talk, and on and off. Whereas Tesla Effect was a single-click affair. Helpfully, only the relevant verbs light up when you hover over a hotspot, so you'll never have to deal with nonsensical shit like opening a shelf or turning on a desk. Most of the 3D rooms don't involve a lot of puzzle solving anyway. They mostly involve a lot of rifling through desk drawers and searching around for items to use on fairly obvious obstacles. That last part, however, is where people usually run into mountainous piles of frustration, and for good reason. This is like the 3D version of pixel hunting. Most of the time it's fairly obvious what you need to do and what item you need to do it with, but it's not at all fucking obvious where that fucking item is, and they love playing hide and seek with this shit. I know being a detective means you have to methodically search for clues and find stuff that others would overlook, but come on, who the fuck leaves pet food behind a decorative sculpture? And here's the worst one. You're supposed to unlock this cabinet under a big screen TV. The key is somewhere in this room. You see it? You see it? Over here, maybe? No, it's fucking here. Are you fucking kidding me, guys? There's playing hide and seek, and then there's playing hide and go fuck yourself. Mercifully, this game also has a full online hint system, which was also pretty damn novel for its time, and this system is fucking great. It reminds me of the old UHS hit systems, if you remember that, or the hint books of Sierra games, where you find the problem you're having from a list of objectives, and then the hint system will gradually nudge you in the right direction until the last hint completely spells out the solution for you. Anyway, barring all of these minor complaints and the occasional jank, I have a lot of love for this game. It is truly one of the first, if not the first of its kind, to get the precarious blend of full motion video and gameplay right. To say this game was ahead of its time is a vast understatement. This game blew the socks off of me when I was a kid, and I was lucky enough to be wearing socks at the time because otherwise my feet would have shot off their sockets like fleshy champagne corks. Sure, it's got its janky moments, and this patrolling eyeball that insta-kills you the second you walk into its line of sight never fails to send my anxiety spiking into overdrive. I mean, just listen to this fucking noise. But on the whole, Under a Killing Moon is just a stellar game, and you can tell the team at Access poured every drop of sweat, blood, and passion into this thing, and then some. FMV games got a bad rep during the 90s for eschewing gameplay for just clicking on random shit and being rewarded with hours of unskippable, badly acted garbage video, and not undeservedly so. Phantasmagoria, I'm looking at you. Oh, fuck off, Don. Go swig some drain cleaner and do us all a favor. But Under a Killing Moon absolutely nails that balance, and whatever missteps it makes are more than made up for when you take the complete package into consideration. There are way more highs than lows here. The story is great, the humor is a perfect blend of slapstick and sarcasm without going overboard on both counts, and the puzzles are, for the most part, really well integrated into the story and really satisfying to solve. Even the stuff that's not essential to the overall story never feels like padding. Like, there's a whole chapter where you're just fucking around inside a hotel suite trying to find naughty pictures of a cheating husband, and under normal circumstances you'd start wondering halfway through this shit why you're putting this much effort into a side quest that adds absolutely nothing to the overarching plot, but it's just so much fun. First, you have to weasel your way past this moron at the reception desk, who incidentally is played by Aaron Connors, the game's writer.
It's my hero, Inspector Burns.
Keep your pants on, son. I'm here to get a room. Make it out for Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
And then, while you're poking around the suite of a cheap escort agency, Tex gets distracted by a piano in one of the rooms. This might be my favorite gag in the whole game.
Good evening, ladies and charms. I'm your entertainer tonight, Mr. Franco Spinoza. I'm gonna be playing some songs that I know you'll love. Listen to this one. Hard and cold, it's what it does to me. Hot and cold, the shower sprays on me. La la, hey, la la la, to hell with it.
Like, it adds nothing to the game in terms of pacing or plot development, but it just shows how much fun they had making this game, and that fun drops off on you like an overly eager massage therapist. Or how about Clint, the bum who lives in a dumpster outside the pawn shop, who displays all the symptoms of crippling drug addiction, except he's addicted to chocolate instead of drugs.
Better you get lost before you eat that chocolate-colored hat of yours!
It's just, these little moments all add up to one glorious experience. Later installments of the series would lean more heavily into the dramatic plot elements and downplay the silliness, and while that does honestly make for better cohesion in terms of plot and overall tone, you gotta admit it's refreshing to see a company throw this much bank at a large-scale production that would undoubtedly have sunk the company entirely if it had tanked, and still find time to include things like this.
The Colonel? Dead? I can't believe it! I guess we won't be going to Bermuda next week.
And for once, Tex isn't the fucking horn dog he was in the previous game, although women for some reason still throw themselves at his feet.
Oh, Tex, hold me. Kiss me.
Listen, Elena, I'd love to kiss you, but I just had a big chili dog with extra onions.
You could argue that the tone is all over the place, and I wouldn't necessarily argue with that, but the whole game is just such a good time that I don't mind one bit. Every time I play it, I find myself always looking forward to the next bit and relishing every moment, except for this fucking robot. Seriously, go fuck yourself, you disembodied residence mask piece of shit. I guess the only real downside is that the ending feels a bit rushed on the gameplay side. Once you get to the Moonchild, it's just a string of empty corridors and a few uninspiring rooms until you set the whole thing to self-destruct, at which point the game yoinks control away from the player and engages autopilot. The saving grace is that the ending cinematic truly is a roller coaster ride worthy of a Hollywood blockbuster, so I still can't be too mad at it. In fact, the bit where you're exploring aboard the Moonchild before the big Hollywood explosion was supposed to have been much bigger and much more expansive, but for whatever reasons, technical constraints or budget or looming deadlines, or likely a combination of all three, they settled for empty corridors instead. If you want to get the full sense of the scale of the ending as originally envisioned, go read the novelization by Aaron Connors. It's a really good read. Anyway, I think I've babbled on for long enough. I'm the Space Quest Historian, and until next time, remember to
strain the sauce.
And I'll see you around the Chrono Stream. Bye!
easy.